So at the table, Anthony,
Where would you like me to sit?
you, wherever you want, you're first, so it doesn't matter. People have to get up and down.
To talk, can I sit or do you want me to sit?
It's either which is your preference.
I'm just going to sit here. So it's
Yeah.
more...
Then you would use the handheld mic.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Make sure you guys are sitting.
You're showing
I
the
don't
video.
know, I'd rather
What's that?
stand
Did you show the video or something?
Yeah.
Did you talk to Nicole? Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's who we had earlier, right? That's when we were exchanging emails earlier when I said I'd like...
Yeah, she's the short person in the lab over there. Yeah, it's such a powerful
Rob?
video. Make sure she
Teraz
puts it
całe.
in.
So let me go...
Kamera?
Yeah, go check it out. I'm going to sit here just at the edge. Anthony will go first. You can either talk first or you can get up and talk whichever is your preference. That's fine too. Perfect. Eat the mic. Yeah. So the handheld mic
Daniel?
will have a minute.
Keep it.
Oh my God! What are you doing here? Wow!
Hey. Oh, hi.
I can't believe
Will you be there on the 19th? On the hill? I'll be there.
Did you drive all the way from
Yeah, good to see you. I was like, oh wow.
Do you need a place to stay?
Do you have your code? Daniel, do you have your code?
So, did you come from DC?
So,
New York.
Anthony,
New
you
York
set
drove?
with that? She's going to put it on
Long drive, like a 4-hour drive?
and you're going to stay seated.
I am.
Okay.
Just so one, I'm not blocking that, but two,
Okay,
just so
perfect.
I can see everybody.
Yeah, perfect. And then
Which mic would you like me to use? Can I just
you're
grab
going to
that
use the
one?
one John has.
Perfect.
And Anthony? I can't believe you came. Where's Eileen? She's over there. Anthony, Claude is going to use the mic, the handheld after you.
So I'll
Yeah.
know how to tell you.
Yeah.
I can't believe she's here.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to St. Cecilia. We always start everything on time, 10 minutes late. You know, it's part of our thing here. We try hard, though. Just want to welcome all of you from near and far, and all those who are joining via the live stream. Jeff, we're so grateful for your presence here tonight, making this happen for so many folks. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules for something that's so important to think about, to talk about. It's got so many different angles to it that can be so polarizing, and we just had a little time together, and I just want to say what a great gift it was, if I can speak on Martha's behalf, and myself and Walter, to be with the three of you a little while ago, and we're just so grateful that you're here. So I'm just going to introduce our good friend and parishioner, Martha Miller. Martha is the one who's really kind of helped me to see things and speak things in the way that I do. So I'm really grateful, even though it's not always easy or timely. So I'm so grateful for your friendship, your support, and your presence here tonight. So, Martha Miller.
Thanks, Father John. Can everybody hear okay? Okay. So just a couple logistics first. The bathrooms are there. There's going to be Doctors Against Genocide material for purchase if you want. We might all want to come to Mass next Sunday in one of the t-shirts. And there's also going to be information and flyers, petitions, etc. on the side table over here where Eileen is. So just a little bit about myself. I'm Martha Miller. I grew up, I suppose my Catholic bio starts with baptism, but beyond that, I think one of the biggest influences, two, the first one being the Catholic Worker. I went there to the Catholic Worker House in New York City fresh from college, and I don't know if, for those of you who aren't familiar, this was a movement founded by Dorothy Day and Peter Morin back in the 30s, and there I discovered a radical Catholicism. And by radical, I mean to the roots. And, the Catholic social teachings, which I think are some of the best kept secrets in the Catholic Church, the works of mercy, And also the deep questioning of why. Why is there homeless? Why is there poverty? And economic justice. And beyond, after that, my second biggest influence as a Catholic, and I'm speaking because we're here at my parish, was going to El Salvador during the Civil War. And there I had the beautiful experience of encountering the influence of Archbishop Romero. He had already been killed by that time. And the influence of the base Christian communities. The parish that we went to in El Salvador had over 400 young catechists killed or disappeared during that Civil War. And that was because they were educating and just helping people ask why and organizing. We listened to the men and women mostly in the countryside, and the stories, harrowing stories of persecution at the hands of the US-funded Salvador army. They were humble, they were fierce, these people. Father Dean Brackley was a Jesuit who was at the university later, after my time, and he said, all of us people would go to El Salvador, why, all these people coming down to El Salvador, why do they come? And he coined it, we go to have our hearts broken. And now fast forward to Gaza, Palestine. I knew about apartheid. Our family had done some funding of a project that was against the wall, project in the West Bank. And then when the genocide took fuller force, and the images were in our face on the media, just heartbroken. And we were having our hearts broken again and again and again. One of the ones I remember vividly was this man just weeping. He had gone to the hospital the day after his twins were born and to get their birth certificates. And when he returned, his apartment had been bombed, and his wife and newborns were killed. So those stories are breaking our hearts. And I didn't know what to do. I'd come to Mass on Sunday and there was no word spoken. That was then, Father John. And it was a harrowing experience. I went to a talk one night and I met Dr. Karameh, and I then from there got involved with Doctors Against Genocide. And we're a group of healthcare workers that we take our kind of oath and our commitment to health and healing seriously, and we see genocide as a public health catastrophe, really. And it breaks our oath, and so we have to speak about it and take action. I have to say, my eyes were open more and more. I didn't know a lot, and I've learned so much from being in Doctors Against Genocide. We go to Washington once a month or so, and we try and speak to the Congress people there, and push for bills to be passed, push for them to hear a Palestinian narrative, which is so lost often. So I've learned a lot, and the billions of dollars of taxes that are spent on bombs. And I'm a nurse practitioner, and I see homeless patients, and they're scrambling to get food while we're spending all this money over there. I love the Dorothy Day quote, maybe you've heard it before, our problems stem from our acceptance of this filthy, rotten system. And I'm learning more and more just how filthy and how rotten it really is. One of the quotes from Father Dean Brackley in El Salvador, I just wanted to put that out as we start the evening, because we're talking about bearing witness. And he was talking about the Salvadorans, but we can say the Salvadorans, the people in Congo, in Sudan, in Palestine. And he says, the victims not only evoke our deepest calling, they put us in touch with the deepest mystery of our lives, the dying and the rising going on in us and around us. They reveal to us that the world is far more cruel than we usually suppose. And at the same time, they help us see that something is underway that is much more marvelous than we usually imagine. a revolution of love and goodness in the teeth of cruelty and contempt. Sin abounds, but grace abounds the more. So tonight we're talking about genocide, most unpleasant and harsh reality, and we're also talking about bearing witness. And the gospel calls us to this. People in Gaza are asking us to bear witness, and so that our hearts may be broken. Because when they're broken, as my dear friend Sister Peggy, our friend in El Salvador, says, we will become ridiculously courageous in love. I'm very excited to be here as a member of Doctors Against Genocide and a member of St. Cecilia Parish. And I'm in bringing these two communities in my life, it's very special, together. So I'd like to say to St. Cecilia's, let's go for it. Let's go for our broken hearts and let these guests break our hearts open, and let's be a parish together, ridiculously courageous in love. I'm going to introduce all three at once, and then each person's going to speak, and at the end we'll have questions. I think Nicole might be passing around papers you can put questions on and for our guests. And then after that period, John will close out with a prayer, and I warmly invite you to stay around and meet the speakers and ask more questions. So first, we have retired Colonel Anthony Aguilar. He is a retired U.S. Army colonel and Special Forces Green Beret, serving 25 years. And after retiring from the Army, he worked at the now notorious Gaza Humanitarian Foundation feeding sites in Gaza. And he resigned after seeing what was happening there. He speaks all over the country. I think he has been in about 6 cities in the last 3 days. He's a whistleblower and a truth teller. We welcome him. Second, we welcome Claude Gatebuke, a Rwandan genocide survivor who, as a young teen, fled the horrible genocide in Rwanda into Congo. He now lives in Memphis, Tennessee, and he runs a group called Aguilar, African Great Lakes Action Network, which is devoted to education around human rights, violations, and genocide. And we'll hear some of his story and an update on what's going on in the Congo. And lastly, backed by popular demand, she spoke here a few months ago, Dr. Karameh, who's co-founder of Doctors Against Genocide. She herself is a Palestinian from the West Bank. She is a pediatric neurologist here in Boston and a humanist supreme. She's going to give us an update on Gaza and also on the projects that Doctors Against Genocide are taking on in Palestine, Congo, and Sudan. So let's give them a warm welcome.
Yes, please.
Gaza is staking its claim to the most valuable real estate in all of Gaza. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is not a humanitarian foundation. They are a land-grabbing, post-war land development company. That's what they are.
This is Anthony Aguilar. He went to Gaza with GG Solutions, a subcontractor of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. He says he wanted to provide aid to starving Palestinians, but instead witnessed a completely different reality.
The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, from the beginning, established distribution sites that were inadequate, that were purposely located in areas that drew the population through active war zones. This is what I saw at these sites. People being shot. People coming and being shot, people leaving and being shot. And every time there was a distribution, we received MCIs, mass casualty incidents.
Aguilar says he chose to resign after repeatedly witnessing what he describes as war crimes. He said he saw Israeli soldiers and US contractors firing glide ammunition at Palestinian aid seekers.
The distribution sites, they are not there to provide food or humanitarian aid. They are there as a trap. The goal is the complete annihilation, the removal, the death of all Palestinians. It's always been Israel's plan to do that, and the GHF being a part of this was always part of that plan. It is an expertly designed and crafted plan for the purpose of genocide, not to provide humanitarian aid.
Since returning to the US, Aguilar has protested at the Senate, demanding an end to the genocide. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and UG Solutions have disputed some of his claims, but Aguilar says US officials are trying to discredit him and insists he won't be silenced.
What that's going to look like is every inch of Gaza is going to be flattened and bulldozed and literally turned into a parking lot. Every Palestinian will be gone, dead, buried under that rubble, or moved somewhere else. Every day we get closer to where there won't be any witnesses. There will be no Palestinians left to testify to the massacre.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here today to speak with all of you, and just to give you some context about who I am, and you've heard my background biography in terms of my career in the military. The sacrifice that I'm putting into this and why it's important is that I'm not a peace activist, I'm not a paid spokesman, I have no social media following. I don't do this for likes, clicks, or subscriptions. Since I've been home in early July, I think I've tabbed it up, I've been home with my wife and child for about 7 days total since early July. I've been gone. In the last 4 days, I've been in 6 cities, from LA to New York to here. It's important to share what I've seen, not because I want you to agree with me. In fact, don't agree with me. Think about it, look it up yourself, research it, come to your own conclusions. What I would just like to offer is that I was there and I saw it. And I don't speak to it from a layman's perspective of having never witnessed war. In the last 25 years, I've spent 25 of those years at war in every war that this country has been involved in since 2001. I have fought in them. Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Tajikistan. I have fought in wars in countries that most of you don't even know that we're fighting wars in. When I went to Gaza, and what I experienced is coming from a place of professional experience, not assumption. And in the words that I use to describe it, it is not hyperbole, it is not dramatics. What I witnessed in Gaza and what is occurring in Gaza are war crimes. It's unquestionable. What is happening in Gaza, at the scale of which it is happening, in our time, under our witness, is a genocide. I do not use that word lightly. That is not a word to be thrown around. That is not a word that we just look at something and we just put a label on it. I am someone that I look at things rationally and through aspects of fact. What's the US position? We've all heard what the United Nations has said, and there are those that would discredit that to say, well, the United Nations is biased. Yet, right now, today, the United States is begging the United Nations to declare a security force to go into Gaza on our behalf for the organization that we just discredited. Why? Genocide, what is it? Why do we use the term? We use that term because we, the United States, in 1948 decided in writing to the United Nations that it would never happen again. Intentional or through wanton negligence. The destruction of a national or ethnic or racial or religious group. Not all of or one of, or. In whole or in part. Through acts of killing. Serious bodily harm. Deliberate infliction of conditions of life to cause all of the above, to include the forceful displacement of the people, either in or outside of the country, or the land of which they reside. Some would say, well, that's what the UN says. You would be wrong. That is what United States Code, Chapter 18, Section 1091 says. That is US law. It's not the UN. The UN's definition is actually a higher threshold. of which the United Nations has also said. So from my perspective and what I saw with my own eyes, assessed with my own brain with 25 years of experience of what death and destruction is, it's a genocide. If we say that it's not, we're being disingenuous. War crimes. What is a war crime? I'm setting a timer because I could go for hours. What is a war crime? A violation of international humanitarian law as prescribed in the Geneva Conventions in the Fourth Protocol, 1952. Who signed on to that? Israel, the United States. Any violation of those aspects is a war crime by definition. It's not a thing we just say, oh, that looks bad, that's a war crime. War crimes are not just cutting off heads and wearing a necklace of ears around your neck. Certainly a war crime. However, war crimes have definitions. The forceful displacement of a people through a combat zone to get food, as you just witnessed in that video. That video didn't come from Hamas. That video didn't come from the Gaza humanitarian or the Gaza Health Ministry. Didn't come from the UN. I filmed that video. It's real. The forceful displacement of people through an area that puts them in inherent danger, to which they then will be killed or put in inherent danger, is a war crime. To utilize food as a weapon is a war crime. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, established by the United States in concert with the Israeli government through the Coordinating Office of the Governance of the Territories. It's an organization called COGAT. You can look this up. COGAT controls everything that goes into Gaza. Everything. It is not the UN. It is not UNRWA. It is COGAT. So to say that what is happening in Gaza is not intentional, it's not a rational argument. Not only is it not unintentional, it is deliberate. Because remember, the definition is not only intentional, but through wanton negligence. 90% of the livable housing in all of Gaza is destroyed. Gone. 76% of the existing hospitals, gone. The remainder of that 24% operate in a capacity that a clinic up the road can't even operate to. So I ask, if it's negligence, why do we continue to give Israel bombs? If it's intentional, why do we continue to give Israel bombs? Negligent or intentional, it is a genocide. 550 million tons of rubble in Gaza that if we started tonight would take until 2050 to clear it. It's not an accident. It's not oops. It's deliberate. Why it matters to me. I'm not Palestinian. I'm not Muslim. I have no Arab background. I'm a Mexican Catholic from Texas. Raised as a Roman Catholic right here in the United States. Went to West Point and joined the Army. As MAGA as it could get if you were to put me on paper. I'm just being honest. I went to the halls of Congress and I got arrested knowing the risks. And I did it to ask our lawmakers. You know why I got arrested? Because I asked Senator Rich, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, why are you not following your oath to the Constitution? And he said, off to jail. On 9/11, I witnessed Tower 2 fall. I don't know if you've heard this name. Maybe you have, Father Michael Judge. Heard the name? Yeah. Catholic priest and the chaplain of the NYFD. Died in Tower 2. If you go to the memorial today, the final pillar that stands in the basement of Tower 2 has his prayer on that pillar. You can see it. It's simple. And it says, Lord, take me where you want me to go. Let me meet who you want me to meet and tell me what you want me to say. And keep me out of your way. I didn't go to Gaza looking for war crimes to report or a genocide. I was retired after 25 years in the army. I was gardening. The biggest challenge I had was trying to keep the deer from eating my tomatoes in my backyard. I wanted to raise my children and be a husband and make up for 25 years of lost time with a wife that also served for 20 years in the army. And when I returned from Gaza, torn by what I saw, broken by what I witnessed, and I told my wife, I don't know what to do, and she said, well, you have to give them a voice. And I said, well, I'll do it, but I'll do it anonymously. I'll do it behind the curtain. And my wife of 18 years looked at me and she said, don't be a coward. You will give these people a voice because you're not a coward and you're not the man I married if you're going to hide. When I got the call on May 13th, recruiting me to go into Gaza because of my special operations background, and UG Solutions, the armed component of the GHF, were looking for people to go. I did not know what the GHF was. None of us did. It didn't exist until March. I did not know what Safe Reach Solutions was. Hadn't heard of them before. They're the contract company that has a written contract with the government of Israel for the delivery of aid into Gaza. I'd never heard of them. In fact, UG Solutions, which was a company in North Carolina where I live, I had never heard of. And when they called me and they asked me, I said, I need to think about it. And this was on a Tuesday, and they said, well, you better think quick because we're leaving Friday. When I hung up the phone and they called me the next day, I had no intention of answering that call. And I don't know why I did. Picked up the phone and I was like, why am I answering this call? And they said, have you thought about it? I already had the script in my head. I can't. I've just, I'm 100% totally and permanently disabled. I shouldn't be going into Gaza. I'm just going to stick this one out. And I said, yes, I'll go, and I don't know why. And I went. And when I went to Gaza, I did not go to Gaza looking for war crimes to report or to confirm or deny the existence of a genocide or to point fingers and say who's right or wrong. To the contrary. And in going in, I wrote on this little board, in fact, I have it in my book here, I was looking through it when we were talking. 3 things I wrote down, 3 facts. Fact number 1, people in Gaza are starving. Whether you want to call them Palestinians, whether you want to call them Gazans, whether you want to call them whatever you want to call them, human beings. Human beings need food to survive. No food was going in. That's a fact. Fact. The United Nations, UNRWA, had been banned from going in. Fact. Regardless of the reasons, regardless of the who, a fact. They were no longer going into Gaza. It's a fact. Starving people, no food. One organization and one organization only had been cleared by COGAT to go into Gaza to deliver food, and that was the GHF. Well, if you want to deliver food to starving people, that's the way. So I went. The narrative at the time was this was going to be the replacement of UNRWA. Thinking that we were going to deliver food to people. What the UN did was 400 distribution sites throughout all of Gaza, 550 trucks a day into the enclave. Gaza is the size of Philadelphia. And imagine, if you will, everything that is needed to feed the people of Philadelphia, but double that population. Water, food, fuel, gas, sewage coming out, everything. The entire enclave is occupied. I don't call Israel an occupation force, they do. Their force is funded through US tax dollars and international as an occupational force, because occupational force has a responsibility. You have to feed people. So going into Gaza under the presumption that we were going to take over the UN mission, and we stood up 4 sites. And out of those 4 sites, we only ran 1 per day. Maybe 2, if the IDF allowed us to. All 4 of the sites located south of Gaza City where the need was. Thousands dying. Out of those 4 sites, the 4th, which is up in the central near the Netzarim corridor where you saw some of that video, was shut down shortly thereafter because the IDF took it over as a base to conduct operations in the Gaza City. The 3 sites that remained were in the furthest region of the south, where there were no human beings to receive food. Rafah, which is gone. For those of you that know the real estate and the geography of Gaza, Rafah is gone. A bustling city that once had beautiful beaches and people living their lives is gone. And under that rubble, there are people that died in that rubble, because every day when we drove into Rafah to deliver to the sites, you could still hear people in the rubble begging for their lives. And what can you do? We weren't feeding people. What it became clear to me once I saw the operational plans from the IDF, because the brigade commander in the area brought us into his headquarters to do an after-action review one day. On the very first day of distribution, we had 34,000 starving Palestinians rush to the site. There were only 20 of us there. If there was any malintent by Hamas or the Palestinians to kill us, I'd be gone. 34,000 people. And yet here I am. Never did I see an armed Palestinian, not one. Never did a Palestinian say or do anything to me that was considered hostile. Ever. Of those that I saw that were asking for food. The position of saying that everyone in Gaza is Hamas, that is called collective punishment. It is a violation of the Geneva Convention. It's a fact. This picture you see behind me there, I'll end with this before I hand it over. This young girl's name is Basma. I also met a young boy named Amir, and that story breaks me down. I've shared that story about 4 times this week, and I can't. You can find it. This story gives me hope. This young girl. This was at site number 4, which was in the north that closed down shortly after we started operations. At these distribution sites, you see in the background, you see that barbed wire, see those berms? If there was audio to this, you would hear gunfire in the background. And yet this little girl, wearing sandals, without parents, ventured to this site alone to get food for her family, because she was the only able-bodied member of her family that can get to the site. All these sites were 8 to 10 kilometers away from the UN encampments. There's no shuttle bus to walk through minefields, barbed wire, shooting. And when this girl showed up to that site, there was no food left. I timed the average distribution. At any given time when we put boxes out, and we didn't distribute, we weren't giving away a hot meal. Throwing food on the ground, rice, beans, some lentils, come and get it. Come and get it. With no water. How do you cook those items without water? How do you survive without water? No water. So by the time these people, children, the Palestinians got to these sites to get food, they were already calorically deficient just from the route, just to travel there to get it. If that isn't the systematic weaponization of food, then I don't know what is. But it sure looks like it to me. This young girl, when she got to this site and there was no food left, her purple backpack, I'll never forget that backpack. And she walks up to me, and another contractor, we were kind of standing there in a line, she comes up and she says, "Where's the food?" It's gone. I'm not leaving without food. Came here to get food for my family. I'm not leaving without food. I came yesterday, and you were out of food. Not leaving without food. Myself and some of the other contractors, it bothered us that when these children, especially the children, when they came to these sites, there was nothing for them to eat. You can't eat dried rice. So we bought cookies, these packages of cookies, so at least they'd have something, you know, some instant calories, sugar, some carbohydrates, something. And this little girl had this box there, so I handed her this package of cookies. You could see it there in her hand. And in that package, large packages, and these smaller packages. And when I handed it to her, this hungry girl, wanting to feed her family, didn't take off and run. She opened it up and she started handing it out to others. And I had a box of these cookies. They came in a box of 10. And she hands them out and she says, "Give me another one." Hand her another bag. She hands them out. "Give me another one." Hand her another box. She hands them out. I wasn't going to stop her. And I give her another one. And we're getting to the end, and I said, "There's not much left." And she said, "Well, if you're not going to feed my people, then I will." And I had that one package left, the one that she's carrying. And I handed it to her, and at the time, the IDF controlled the sites in terms of when we opened them and when we closed them. Each one of these sites was co-located with an Israeli Defense Force combat outpost, a fighting position, either tanks or infantry, one of the two depending on where. This particular site had a Markava tank company. Have you all heard the story of Hind Rajab? This tank company there at the Netzarim is the Vampire Empire, the 505th Battalion that was also responsible for the killing of Hind Rajab. This company. This young girl, when I handed her that last package, and I said, you have to leave, it's dangerous, you have to go home now. She stops and she's putting the cookies into her purple backpack, and she takes out a photo. And I said, you have to go home. Sweetie, you have to go home. And she looks at me, and she says, this was my home. Right here was my home. My house was right here that you ripped down to make this site. That mosque that's gone, that's rubble. The hospital that I was born in, that's gone, that's rubble. Where my friends and I used to play on the playground, that's gone. This was my home. How do you respond to that? And I said, I'm sorry. You have to go home. Go home, it's dangerous. And as she tightens up the straps of her backpack, and she turns to walk away, she looked at me right in the eyes, and she said, you go home. So I did. Father Michael's prayer is a prayer that I will never forget for the rest of my life. It shaped me as a young man. Keep me out of your way, Lord. I didn't ask to go to Gaza. I didn't want to go. I had seen enough of death and war and destruction. But I did. And the reason I think it's important to share with America what happened is because our values are on the line. We're funding this. Not tertiarily just through bombs and ordnance, but directly. Right now, there doesn't have to be a single bomb dropped again, and thousands in Gaza will die. No vaccines are going in. No baby formula. 78% of the population lives on or near open sewage. Dysentery, polio, hepatitis A, adrenovirus, rabies. Intentional releasing of rabid dogs into the population. Once you are infected with rabies and you don't have a vaccine, it is 100% lethal. There's doctors in here, y'all know that. I'm not making that up. We're a part of this. Set aside the ceasefire and the discussion of hostages and just look at the 20-point peace and prosperity plan. Where does it have a plan for the delivery of humanitarian aid? Food. Food alone is not humanitarian aid. They're dying. What I said in that video, I didn't say that like yesterday, and that's just, I'm saying what's current. That was from the conference we were at. That was Detroit. It was months ago, where I said, if this continues, this is where we'll be. And here we are. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do know how to read. And I do understand that what I saw, and that if we don't stop it, what it will be. And it's happening. And when the world sees it, that stain on humanity is on us as Americans. We can't hide from it. We can't step away from it. We can't say we didn't know. We can't turn our heads in shame and say, oh, never again. Never again? Until next time? Never again. As that young girl walked away, a voice in my head, and it wasn't mine. I talked to myself a lot. It wasn't my voice. It said, don't forget this. Don't forget what you've seen. You know where else it says that? On the western wall of the Holocaust Museum. As you leave. Don't forget what you've seen. I will not forget. And as I said in the beginning, don't agree with me. don't take what I say as fact. Look it up. Read about it. Learn about it. Learn about the yellow line that's now been established within Gaza, where 58% of the population is still under Israeli control. Read about it. It's real. Take the words of the occupier themselves. Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, Netanyahu. If you don't know those names, look them up. Imagine if Mike Johnson said that the only way we'll have peace in America is if Florida is wiped off the map. Ben-Gvir, Netanyahu. Not influencers, leaders who say, kill them all. It is a genocide. By definition, by evidence, facts, and findings of the highest courts in the land, but also the United States. By our own laws. It's important to me that people understand the story of what's happening in Gaza and the plight of the Palestinians, because in this moment, all of us are Palestinian. Race, gender, religion, I don't care if you're brown, black, white, Jew, or Gentile. We are in this together. And if you think that this stops where it is now, I ask you to look at Sudan, Rwanda, the Congo. Where does it end? Where does it end? Sure as heck doesn't end in Venezuela. Where does it end? I think it's great that we can have these discussions in our country and not be shot for it. I've received a lot of death threats. I've already talked to my family and I've told them that I may not live through this, and that's okay with me. Because if we continue on this path of allowing what's happening in Gaza to continue, the world will turn on us. And when they do, the war that we will fight will not be the wars of the last 25 years where we're fighting militias and cells of terrorists with AK-47s and roadside bombs. We will be fighting in a war with opposition that has parity. What does that mean? Aircraft carriers, Generation 5 fighter jets, surface-to-air missiles, jets and ships will be blown out of the sky and out of the water, and Americans will come home in coffins draped in flags, and we will all say never again. And we will all say, what could we have done? And we'll put yellow ribbons on our doors. And we're going to have to look at ourselves in the mirror. That's my objective in this. I'm not an anti-Semite. Not anti-Jew, I'm not anti-Israel. I am pro-humanity, and I am one that believes in America first. And America first doesn't include, in my opinion, sending $3.9 billion to a foreign government, regardless of who they are, while Americans starve. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. I know that comes with risk. I hope that you see from this that I'm not political. I haven't mentioned one bit of politics. This isn't about politics, race, religion. It's about humanity. And if you don't believe my testimony, who are you going to believe? I was there. So, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Anthony. Excuse me. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
That was a really powerful testimony, and I think eyewitness testimony is so important. And I don't know who set this up. Maybe it was Martha, for me to speak after Anthony, but it's a perfect setup because you don't actually have to see the person through a screen that has lived through a genocide. that has survived a genocide. It's somebody that you can see in person. It's somebody that you can shake hands with. It happens to real people, in case there are people in this room who still don't believe that genocide happens and it happens to humans, or that what is happening not only in Palestine, that is genocide, but also in Congo, and people who deny the atrocities in Sudan and other places. And the weapon for it, for this, one of the things that has been most powerful, I think more than even the bombs, is the narrative around the genocides and the atrocities, where people are so committed to denying these genocides and these atrocities, and they are so committed that they will bend over backwards and say, oh, it's complicated. But if it's happening to them, it's not that complicated. They just dehumanize the person that it's happening to, the people, the millions of people that it's happening to. And my purpose tonight is not only to put a human face to what happens in these atrocities, it's also a call to action. And so I'll start with a little bit of my story, surviving the Rwandan genocide. I was born in Rwanda. Growing up, I was actually oblivious to the fact that Rwanda had ethnic groups. I was also oblivious to the fact that there were other countries in the world. Y'all know anybody else like that? When I was 10 years old, so as a child, I never actually seen soldiers dressed for combat. Rwandan soldiers dressed like Boy Scouts. They wore these long tan pants and short sleeve tan shirts, never seen a weapon. Only the police carried clubs or batons. Rwanda was known as the Switzerland of Africa. And today it's known as the Singapore of Africa. When at 10 years old a war started, I actually thought somebody was shooting a movie in Rwanda. I thought maybe somebody was making a new Rambo movie, like some war movie. But then I was told, oh no, there is a war. Rwanda's been invaded, and it's been invaded by soldiers from Uganda, which is north of Rwanda. And some of those soldiers are exiled Rwandans. So these are people who had been exiled 30 years prior. One of the people who was exiled in Uganda, who went as a toddler, was Rwanda's president, Paul Kagame. At the time when the invasion started, he was actually training here in the US at Fort Leavenworth as a Ugandan soldier. Then he came back to lead this war and this rebellion inside of Rwanda. How was he recruited into the Ugandan military? In the early 80s, Uganda's president now, named Yoweri Museveni, lost an election and he started a war. During that war, he recruited a lot of exiled Rwandans, which one of them was Paul Kagame. And so then they were promoted to high-ranking positions in the Ugandan army, and 1990 hits, that war starts. Paul Kagame comes to lead this war, and this rebel group was made up of mostly exiles of Tutsi ethnicity. Rwanda has three ethnic groups. There's Hutus, there's Tutsis, and there's Twas. The Hutus are the largest, and then the Tutsis. The Twas are almost extinct in Rwanda. If you were to put all the Twas in Rwanda in a stadium, like an NFL stadium, you would still have a bunch of seats. More than half the stadium would still be empty. just in the stands, not on the field. This is one ethnic group that's never talked about, but they are actually the one that is most on the brink of extinction. I remember one time in school they asked us, what ethnic group do you belong to? And some kids knew they were Hutus, others knew they were Tutsis, many kids didn't know who they were, and I was so proud to get up and say, oh, I'm Christian. Yeah, that was the reaction that I got. You know, they laughed. And then I went home and asked my parents, what's wrong with being Christian? And they asked me the story. When I told the story, my sister goes, oh, Claude, you're so stupid. You should have told them you're Catholic or something else. And I was like, but there were no Catholic either. And there were no Protestants or anything. And so this was to the extent that many of us growing up in Rwanda actually had no clue about ethnicity. Like I said, I only knew Rwanda to be the only country in the world. Everybody's black. There was a part of Rwanda called Europe where there were white people and they spoke with a really heavy accent when they spoke in Rwanda. That was my understanding of the world until this war started, and then I knew there were other countries, there was ethnicity, but then it also started something that was described by Anthony, which was displacement, was one of the major things that happened because of the atrocities that these rebels were committing. They would call people to meetings like this, hundreds of people surround them, shoot them. And those who survived, they would finish them off with hand weapons. There's actually a famous term, and this actually started in Uganda. They trained in Uganda with this. They brought it to Rwanda, and I'll connect this to the Congo, by the way. And it's called kafuni. Kafuni is an old hoe. They bash people's heads in, and that is a technique that they actually use. So many people were displaced. Many people, like the child you saw in the picture, who had lost all their families, were now all over Kigali. Rwanda was totally insecure. By the time 3.5 years into this war, when the genocide started, it would have been cheaper for me as a young teen to buy a grenade than it would have been for me to buy a bottle of soda. And so there were weapons everywhere, there were terror attacks all over the country, and the very last thing that happened leading up, right up to the genocide, was a terror attack on the presidential plane, which was carrying Rwanda's government was predominantly Hutu, and the rebels were predominantly Tutsi. Rwanda's Hutu president and Burundi's Hutu president, both on the plane, were shot on April 6, 1994. Somebody called our house. My mom picked up and she then came back to us and goes, oh, you know, they shot the president's plane. And my reaction was, oh my God, I hope the president didn't die, because if he died, we're not gonna be able to finish our soccer tournament. And my sisters, again, they're like, oh, Claude, you're so stupid. This is really dangerous. And that same night, we started hearing guns, heavy gunfire. We started hearing bombs dropping all over the place. People were screaming, animals were making noise, dogs were barking, people were calling for help, and it was like destruction all over the place. And I was so scared. I was shaking, my stomach was bubbling, I was pacing back and forth, not knowing where to go, and then eventually I went numb. Next day we went out, it looked like the neighborhood hadn't been touched, but the shelling was still constant. We would hear an explosion, boom, on one side of the, one end, and then it would whistle over our heads, and boom, on the other side. And that was going on day and night, flashes, we would see the flashes at night, and the next thing that happened was extremist Hutu groups started going after Tutsis and killing them with machetes and hand weapons, house to house. We went into hiding. It was me, my two sisters, and my mother, and then there were a couple of neighbors that came to hide with us. And we would hear people inside of our house looking for us, looking to kill us. We eventually were bundled up by some neighbors. They took us away to another neighbor's house, which This was very common. A lot of Tutsi people who survived the genocide actually were sheltered by their Hutu neighbors. So we're in this house, and there's people coming in all the time to take shelter, and the RPF, the Rwanda Patriotic Front, which was the rebel group that started this war, was shelling the city to get everybody out. They were shooting everybody indiscriminately, and people behind their lines were being systematically killed. And they started bombing this neighborhood, and the house got hit. And it got so dangerous, the family that was sheltering us hired a pickup truck to get us away from the city, from Kigali. And we started leaving Kigali on this pickup truck. We kept getting stopped at checkpoints. They threatened to kill us, and every time somebody would intervene. And then at one checkpoint, they stopped us. They selected me and my mother, put my mother on one side and put me on the other side of the street. And the guy looked me in the eyes and he goes, "Say goodbye to life." And then they led us away from the street, took us to this little bamboo shelter or bamboo forest. There was a carpentry shed, and as soon as we got under that carpentry shed, neighbors ran up and they started screaming and yelling, saying, "Hey, leave them alone, don't kill those people, leave them alone." And so that distracted them for a minute, and they asked, then they turned to us and they said, "Go talk to those people, borrow some shovels and hoes, and dig your own grave because we need to bury you after we kill you." And so this group was women, it was children, it was elderly men, and they were also scared of these guys because they were armed to their teeth. The driver who had been ordered to leave with my two sisters and my little cousin and a bunch of other people on the truck, he came back twice. And both times he came back with another person, and each one of those people started pleading for us and saying, "Don't kill them, leave them alone." It went on. We got to this place in mid-afternoon. It was pitch black when one of the men pleading for us said, "You know what, this boy and his mother are not gonna make it 5 miles from here. Let somebody else kill them." Somehow they agreed to that. So we left this place. We went and took shelter in another family near the border of Congo. Now we're in northwest Rwanda. And the bombing and the shelling and the shooting and the indiscriminate killing then got to this part, and we fled into Congo. And I'm gonna fast forward for the interest of time. In Congo, we were homeless, we were hungry, we were starving. The only belongings we had was, and this is with me, my mom, and my two sisters, we had a pot, a spoon, a cup, and a plate. That was all our belongings. There was no water. The only source of water was the Lake Kivu, which divides Rwanda and Congo. This lake was polluted. There was animals showering in it. My sister once went to get water from the lake, and the bucket that she used actually pulled a head, like somebody's head. People were showering in this lake. I mean, it was horrible, but that was the source of drinking, cooking, and shower water. And people continue to die. Inside of Rwanda, before we left, when you went outside, it stunk. The stench of decomposing human flesh, because bodies were piling up at the side of the street during that genocide. The gunpowder, the smoke, the burning structures, all of that mix. When you went outside, you wanted to throw up. In Congo, it was piles of dead bodies from dehydration because so many people caught cholera. We were rescued from Congo to Uganda. We eventually went to Kenya and made our way to the US, and I did not want to share my story. Even though, at the time when they ordered us to dig our own graves, I felt so many emotions, including fear, but the one that was the strongest was loneliness. I felt alone even though I was there with my mother. And I wished that somebody would tell the story of what is happening to us. And then when I got to the US, I betrayed that. Didn't tell the story, didn't share the story, didn't share the story of the people who actually have perished. And then, of course, 2 years after that genocide in Rwanda, Paul Kagame, president of Rwanda, and Yoweri Museveni, the president of Uganda, who trained him, they invaded Congo. They surrounded those refugee camps and killed as many people as they could. And they went across the Congo and killed millions of people. And that genocide is still going on today. It's the most deadliest conflict, deadliest genocide since World War II, but it's the most underreported. Most people have not heard about what is going on in the Congo, what's been going on in the Congo. Part of it is because of how the media reports on it. It's about, they talked about the story as a very complicated story instead of calling out the fact that US allies, Rwanda and Uganda, are invading and occupying and plundering resources from Congo to benefit multinational companies that then sell the products, the coltan, which is in our electronics, the lithium, which is in the electric cars, and all of these other resources that are part of now, were part of the tech revolution and now part of the green revolution. A lot of these resources come from the Congo. And by the way, as it is now, the US is brokering a deal so that it's supposed to be a peace deal between Rwanda and Congo, but there is a clause in there. It doesn't talk about actually stopping the occupation or justice or anything, but there's a clause in there to give access to US American companies to the resources. So it's a resource, this genocide is fueled by these resources. So now back to me in the US, it wasn't until I went to college and read Frederick Douglass's book and saw his story, a 7-year-old boy who was sold into slavery, started resisting at 17, freed himself at 21, and he helped so many people to freedom, but also used the story of exposing evil, which is why I really admire what you do, exposing evil, exposing what is happening, because the truth must be told. The stories of the people who are being silenced forever must be told. And I saw that this person who was born into slavery, he was basically somebody's property, was able to do all of these things. I was inspired, and that's how I started speaking. During that time, the Congo genocide had taken over 5 million people, and most of them were children under the age of 5. And my purpose when I started sharing was to share the stories of what happens to children during genocide and mass atrocities and war crimes and these wars that many people think are fought for our freedom or for us to live the lifestyle that we have an appetite for. So that led to forming our organization, the African Great Lakes Action Network, AGLAN, A-G-L-A-N. And our purpose is to bring peace, justice, and prosperity into the region. It's a very prosperous region to begin with. Nobody should be starving in a place like Congo. By the way, today, the victims of the genocide in Congo, between the more than 6 million people who have lost their lives, who've been killed, and the displaced, is more than the total population of Rwanda, one of the invading and occupying countries. By the way, Rwanda has ties to Israel. They have military technology from Israel. In fact, they also had a deal with Israel to receive Sudanese and Eritrean refugees, and Israel will pay Rwanda for that. That deal fell through, but the initial people who were actually sent to Rwanda, some of them ended up in slavery in Libya. Later, the UK, which is another one of the protectors of Rwanda's and Uganda's regime, did another deal to send exiles and migrants to Rwanda and pay Rwanda to have those people in Rwanda. That also fell through. Denmark had a deal to do the same thing. So displacement is not just actually in the region. Today, the US is actually deporting people to Rwanda in this mass deportation. So Rwanda's been a partner of the US and the UK and the European Union especially. They fund Rwanda's military, they train Rwanda's military, same for Uganda, in order to help plunder the resources. And people are living stories even worse than the story I just shared. That's mine. And what does this have to do with us besides the fact that we are consumers? We are also taxpayers. And our money is being used to fund those atrocities. And part of our purpose here is also to support, and part of my purpose here, I'm a part of that even though I'm not a healthcare provider, Doctors Against Genocide. And it's also to actually get your support. So our government is sending bombs and billions of dollars to actually kill people. The bombs don't do anything else. Nobody eats bombs. But also, we appreciate your generosity to actually contribute to people doing the work. There is humanitarian work, but there's also advocacy work, which also our organization focuses mostly on the justice piece, the accountability piece. And the main thing, the first thing that we work on is establishing the truth and giving a voice to the people who are directly affected to share their stories. That's number one. Two is the pursuit of justice where the most egregious perpetrators are held to account. Because one of the things that we've had recurring is that there's always amnesty for the criminals. Anytime there is some type of peace deal, there's amnesty that allows people who are committing these mass atrocities to get away with these atrocities, and we don't want that to continue. So our organization actually has a very specific project for the justice process, to support the justice process for the Congolese people, which we support the recommendations of the UN mapping exercise report, which actually reported on the most egregious crimes in the Congo. Most egregious, which if there was a massacre that took out all of us in this room, it probably would make it in that report. The massacres and the crimes that are documented in that are so horrific. So we support that, and we're working on that. We're actually actively in the middle of a pursuit of the perpetrators. The other piece is, for our justice project, is eventually getting reparations for the survivors, which is, there are companies that actually benefit from the plunder of the Congo. And there are countries that are actually involved in the destruction of the Congolese people. And so that's the second piece. The third piece is making sure that people get their land back. Because millions in the last just decade, more than 7 million Congolese have been displaced. That's just the last decade. This genocide has been going on for the last 30 years. And so, again, we welcome your support, supporting our work and supporting Doctors Against Genocide. And thank you for being here, and for those who are following online, for following the stream. And I'll turn it over to Karameh. And I hope nobody leaves the room thinking what is happening is not genocide. I know Anthony said don't agree with him, but I actually think anybody that doesn't agree with him is because they are so committed to protecting the perpetrators that they will find every different way to not call it what it is. But a fact is a fact. The definition of genocide has been stated here. I'm not going to repeat it, but it's happening. It's happening to people in Gaza. It's happening to people in Congo. And please make sure that you share the stories of the people, but you also support organizations doing the work for those communities. Thank you so much.
Just a quick announcement. We're going to pass a basket with papers if people have questions, because I know we're going a little over time. That might make that final part of the evening a little quicker. So,
Thank you so much. Thank you, St. Cecilia Church. Thank you, Father, Anthony, and Claude. I'm very proud to know you and work with you. My name is Karameh Kuemmerle. I'm a pediatric neurologist. I'm the co-founder of Doctors Against Genocide. Thank you all for being here with us, and I will try to be quick so that we're not staying here for a very long time. I just wanted to talk about Doctors Against Genocide and how we founded it and what is the mission of it. Doctors Against Genocide was founded on a simple and sacred conviction. Every human life holds equal worth, and silence in the face of atrocity is complicity. Our mission is very ambitious. It is to end genocide. We defend our fellow humans. We defend the dignity of every patient everywhere. We are physicians, we are nurses, we are health professionals, we are activists, we are military people. We share the mission of ending genocide. We bear witness as an act of faith and as an act of medicine. We believe that every life has equal worth. My responsibility as a doctor is to care for the patient in front of me. My responsibility also is to speak up when the conditions that cause suffering are ignored or made invisible. I write notes for my patients to advocate for better housing, for accommodations, and I also go to the Congress to advocate against genocide. The oath we take as physicians does not end at the clinic door. It calls us to bear witness and to act. We are inspired at Doctors Against Genocide above everything by our colleagues in Gaza. Over 1,500 medical professionals have been killed in Gaza. Dr. Nujaila said, "We did all we could, remember us." He wrote that on a board that was found after the whole hospital was destroyed, Al Ahli Hospital. We did all we could, remember us. This is what we all should be doing. Just like Anthony went to Gaza and he could not be silent about what happened, this is the calling that moves all of us at Doctors Against Genocide. When we partner with communities that support, we do not do it out of charity. We do it as accompaniment, as witnessing, and as solidarity. We work with a community with visual impairment in Palestine. We support them. We rent land. We bought tents. We provide food for them because the visually disabled people, over 800 of them, have been made blind by Israeli bombs. We realize that the disabled, the young, the pregnant women, the elderly are the first to go. And that is where we focus our efforts. We also realize that this country, the United States, supplied 57,000 artillery shells, 36,000 cannon bombs, spent 39 billion in sales, in military sales, in the last 2 years to Israel. So we hold a responsibility as Americans who pay taxes to do our share and to oppose what is happening. We work with the community with disability, and we try to provide education, mobility, food, because food, they cannot go and seek food on their own. So we need to work together to provide the food for them. In El Fasher, Sudan, where we have been in touch with our colleagues, the Sudanese colleagues, things are not complicated. There is a genocide happening there. There are people who are fleeing a kill zone, and there are mothers who lost tens of their children, 10 children, a mother saying that 10 of my children were killed. In El Fasher, we listen to the witnesses, and as medical professionals, we are committed to helping with sanitation. Many of you probably heard about the cholera in El Fasher. It is spreading like fire because of crowding and because of poor sanitation. We are committed to building sanitation facilities with clean water, chlorine, and soap to halt the spread of cholera. In Congo, sexual violence is a tool of genocide. In Congo, we work with a group of young women and medical professionals. We provide medicine, we pay medical bills, food, and psychological support. These young women have suffered so much. We give them a voice. We tell them that their story matters to us, and we give them the opportunity to rebuild their lives with their children, because many of them are teenagers with very small children. And for that to happen, they need the support of everyone. We must name the truth. The UN Special Rapporteur report made it plain that the genocide in Gaza has been assisted by 62 countries, mostly Western countries. It is on us also to hold them accountable. As people in this sacred place, a church, we are called to see every suffering child, every wounded mother, every displaced family, and we are commanded to act with compassion and courage. Courage, even when the consequences are very high. Unfortunately, telling the truth and speaking for the victims sometimes puts us in, I don't want to say trouble because it's not trouble, but makes us a target for those who protect the perpetrators. For that, we say we are committed to witnessing, and we are committed to revealing the truth and standing with the victims and not playing by the playbook of the perpetrators. I will share quick slides here to just give you an idea what we do as Doctors Against Genocide. We get very angry, and this is one of our members. She's a medical student. We really get angry when children are being killed and when children are being starved. And anger is the right emotion. We also support our colleagues in Gaza, in Congo, in Sudan. We speak up for them. This is a picture of Dr. Abu Safiya. Dr. Abu Safiya is a pediatrician who has been incarcerated in Gaza for several months, and his crime is that he did not leave his patients. This is Mr. Amawi. He is our coordinator on the ground in Gaza. Dr. Al-Farra, he's a pediatrician in Al-Nasser Hospital. We meet with him every week. He gives us a report on how things are on the ground in Gaza. This is a project that we are in the process of doing with Al-Shifa Hospital, which is rebuilding Al-Shifa Hospital with getting recycled beds from the rubble, getting very high quality tents, and building a unit, a ward to take care of patients, because the hospitals are significantly over capacity in Gaza. This is a project that does not rely on foreign aid. This relies on the resources that are found in Gaza itself, in the rubble. Our engineering colleagues pick up the beds, the broken beds, they weld them back to function, and they find the things that they need inside of Gaza. We also support the medical students by paying their tuitions and by giving them food, and so that they do not worry about going to the aid sites. And I will just share a video of some of the projects that we're doing. One of the things that we focus on is that our aid is not charity, it is solidarity. It is based on humanity, impartiality, independence, and neutrality. We identify the people who need it the most, and we ask them to give us directions. They tell us how they want it to be done, and we try our best to do what they want us to do.
On behalf of Doctors Against Genocide, we're honored to stand with Gaza's medical students in this time of hardship. Today, Doctors Against Genocide has sponsored 200 medical students and their families with food parcels, ensuring that they have the support they need to continue their journey. Supporting these medical students isn't only about survival. Supporting these medical students is supporting healthcare, the future of healthcare in Gaza.
Hello everyone, this is the Let's Act Together team. We are in Shasha, in Masisi territory, Republic of Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. We managed to come here today to support children. Most of them are very sick of malnutrition, as you can see in the videos, and so many are wounded. They had no access to basic health care, but with the support of Doctors Against Genocide and all the partners, we managed to bring to them some kits of medicines that were supporting them. We also came here with a great support from the different partners so that we make sure their lives also are saved. Because of your different donations, these people have been treated, these people are getting hope, and they're getting hope. So I believe together with all of us, we will make their lives better. Thank you.
Thank you. It just breaks my heart to see kids asking for food.
Powerful. Can we just catch our breath and if there's any questions? I think somebody was worth passing around of asking if there's questions in that, or if anyone else just has a question?
Hi, my name is Dr. Hussein Ghazni. I'm an ophthalmologist. I used to be in clinical practice, but now I work in the pharmaceutical industry. I was introduced to the organization this morning by your co-founder, Maisa. I was on the Zoom call with her. My question, and really my interest for a very long time, has been about the orphans in these situations, particularly Gaza. Thousands and thousands of children have been killed, families have been destroyed, and of course, it's going on in Congo, it's going on in Rwanda. What is any one of your, if anything, is any of your organizations doing to help the orphans in these situations? And how is it that I may help?
Thank you very much. So there are over 20,000 children who have been orphaned in Gaza, either by one parent or two parents. We are hoping to be able to support them. Again, we take our cues from the community there. Many of these orphans have surviving families, so the best situation is for a surviving family member to take care of the children. And that means that we have to support the family that is supporting the child. And considering that every single family in Gaza has been affected because 90% of the homes have been demolished, it means a comprehensive support for all slides of the society. I think when we support orphans, we have to do it thoughtfully. The orphan is going to be part of the community at large, and singling the orphans by themselves without taking consideration of the community around them can create difficulties for the orphans and for their families. So that is why agency for people in Gaza to decide what to do, how to support themselves and the surviving children who are orphaned, is what will guide us in this project. So we are in the process of doing a study and deciding how to do this with our partners in Gaza. Thank you for your interest. And I really appreciate every donation, no matter small or large. We started not asking for donations at Doctors Against Genocide because we were focused on advocacy. But to be an effective advocacy group, you also have to meet the needs of the people you advocate for. So anything that is small, large can be very helpful. And thank you for this question. Appreciate it.
Any other questions?
First of all, thank you for just sharing the truth and thanking you for that. I had a question for Anthony, which is, when you first got to Gaza, was there, or prior to the mission starting, was there any attempt to, by the IDF or anybody else, to sort of dehumanize the Palestinians prior to the mission? Like, was there any attempt to, like, sort of, I guess, indoctrinate, I guess, into the sort of belief system prior to the mission starting to dehumanize the Palestinians?
So the, next one. Yeah, that's the live stream. Yeah. Is this one? Dehumanization is a very powerful aspect of war, but the psychological aspects of warfare that we've seen that started long long ago and throughout, are present now, if more than ever. And when you force a human being who's starving to get food and to pick it up from the ground, from a pile, that's an aspect of dehumanization. You're forcing someone to beg for food. That's by design. Now, there was what I would call very overt attempts and overt implications of dehumanization, and then there were direct operations in that dehumanization. And when I first arrived into Israel, we, as the contractors, we were controlled by, under the command, I guess, if you will, of Kogat. Again, Kogat is under the Ministry of Defense. And a Kogat officer took us to a location called Sderot, S-D-E-R-D-O-T. It's a hillside that overlooks Gaza on the Israeli side of the border. There's documentaries about this location. You can find it and see for yourself. But at this overlook, it has been turned into a picnic location where there's vending machines and there's cafes and food trucks and far-range binoculars where you can look like you're on the Empire State Building looking over New York City into Gaza City, into Beit Hanun and Jabalia where the bombing is going on. And you can stand there on this hilltop and see the city. In fact, it's even more, the depravity of it is because Derot, the tell that is on the hilltop, is actually in the Bible, which when in standing over and looking over the Holy Land and the Crusades and seeing the land, it's the depth of dehumanization is so deep in terms of erasing the culture. When you think about it, the reason Palestinians cannot fish off the coast is not because it has to do with feeding or that they're going to escape or that they're going to somehow threaten the state of Israel. It's because that directly takes away from deep-rooted aspects of Palestinian culture. This Salah ad-Din road that goes directly through Gaza, you can find this in the Bible. It goes back to 479 BC. That road once connected the Sinai Peninsula through Palestine into the land, into Lebanon, past the Golan Heights. It was part of the Silk Road. That has now been destroyed. There's not anything of it left. In addition to the dehumanization and the killing, there is an overt attempt at the erasure of Palestinian culture. Because if Palestine doesn't exist, and Palestinians don't have a right to exist, well then it's not a genocide. Because you're not really killing any human beings that exist. That's the narrative. That's the intent. So yes, I think that when you look at the killing of a parent and then an orphan left to fend for themselves, that's dehumanization. Can you imagine a child? Just think about it here in America. A child walking the streets with no shoes and no food, hungry, in the cold, with no parents. And we would just walk by that child and say, oh, I don't care. In order to do that, you would have to see that child as not being a human. It's the only way that you can stand by and see this happening. So the attempts at dehumanization run deep. What was further concerning to me as part of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and who was hired to work on this contract, of which I was an outlier. The primary recruiting base to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation for the armed contract component was an organization called the Infidels Motorcycle Club. I wish I was making this up, I'm not. The Infidels Motorcycle Club, they have a charter, and their charter is to fight worldwide jihad and to eliminate all Muslims from the earth. They're a motorcycle gang here in the United States, headquartered in Florida. They were the element that was hired to recruit for UG Solutions. Remember I told you May 13th I got a phone call and it was like, hey, 4 days later we're leaving? I was one of the, hey, we've got to hire a few more people to meet contract. It was a contract. They had to bring in 300 contractors. They only had like 278. They had to hire some last minute guys. So when you consider hiring an organization that calls themselves the Infidels, who brandish themselves with a tattoo of a Crusader cross in 1095, which is the year of the First Crusades, Pope Urban dictated that all Muslims should be eradicated from the earth. And you send that organization armed to the teeth with machine guns, pistols, stun grenades, riot batons, tear gas, and shotguns to overwatch the systematic starvation of people and say that that's not an aspect of psychological warfare, there's no denying it. It is. So it is of my assumption, it is my assertion that psychological warfare towards the further dehumanization of the population is a component of the war, and it will continue because it is critical to the narrative of that, well, if they don't exist, then it's not a genocide.
Any other question?
Hi, thank you all three of you for your work, contributing to truth in your own ways. My questions, one question first to Claude. What symmetries have you observed regarding mainstream media coverage across genocides, whether it pertains to in your own country, in Rwanda, or in Gaza, the Congo, or other genocides, which frustrates you the most? And another question to Colonel Aguilar, how has your message and outspokenness evolved since you first came out months ago, potentially by other advocates in the pro-Palestinian movement? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. What I find most frustrating with the media and reporting on these genocides is actually how complicit they are in just about every one of them. The Rwandan genocide has a way it's been crafted and told. You know, there's an official narrative that is basically like the Rwandan government has said, this is how you need to tell the story of the genocide. And anybody that speaks about it and shares experiences that don't align with it, they're silenced. But it's very well accepted because it's aligned with the popular narrative and corporate interest. When it comes to the Congo, it's how the narrative, first of all, is, and this is very, very common when it comes to atrocities and denying atrocities, they will say it's complicated. They will intentionally say there are hundreds of armed groups, and some of those might be like 3 or 4 people, and completely disregard the fact that there is actually a whole invasion happening, sponsored and supported by our tax dollars and the subsequent governments, Democrat and Republican alike, over the last 30 years. And to make it look like this is Africans killing Africans, this is black on black crime, and this is what normally happens, and this is the usual with the Africans, and completely disregard the role of Western countries in this genocide. But the framing it as complex and complicated is the easiest way out to not call out the perpetrators. And so that is what I find most frustrating, which actually also goes to, I would like to just add to your answer to the doctor who asked, how can you help? A lot of people, when they think about support and helping, they usually think about humanitarian solidarity. But there is work to support orphans that is beyond humanitarian solidarity, which is the work of justice, the work of making sure their voices are heard. And so mobilizing is important. Mobilizing support for that kind of work is important. And not only does DAG do that work, the solidarity, the humanitarian solidarity, but it's also advocacy work. It's also, so you can advocate, you can join the advocacy, or you can support the advocacy. And that is for pretty much everyone. I think that you asked the question for yourself, but I think everybody's wondering that same question.
So how my view has changed, you know, my years of service in the military, some people might think that there's special operations that equate that to the Navy SEALs or Rangers or, you know, elite commandos, and that's not what I did. As a Green Beret, Green Berets are selected and educated and trained to understand culture, inculcate into a culture, and overthrow the oppressor. Our motto is De Oppresso Libere, to free the oppressed. That's always been my mindset. My wife is not watching. I think she's at church tonight because it's Wednesday, but my mom's watching, and she'd probably say that from a young age I was a stubborn questioner. It was, why? Why? So like in the backseat on a road trip, I was not the one that asked, are we there yet? I asked, why aren't we there yet? So since I have returned and seeing what I've seen, I honestly did not think that when I returned home and I went into Congress to speak with congressmen, I was with Human Rights Watch actually. When I first got home from Gaza, I didn't know what to do with what I had saw, so I Googled, how do you report a war crime? I don't know. So I Googled it, how do you report a war crime? I said, well, here's these organizations you can reach out to. So I reached out to Human Rights Watch and told them what I had saw, and they said, well, you should come to Congress, you should come to DC and speak with congressmen. And I did. I didn't think that when I sat down with members of Congress, one, that when I explained what I saw, the atrocities, showing them videos of what I saw, I thought the response would have been, oh my God, we need to do something about this. Why haven't we already? The response was, we know. We know. And as Claude had said, the results to that were, it's complicated. Complicated, it is not. Your ability to do something about it might be complicated based on where your loyalties lie. And you can draw a clear line of who receives funding in their campaigns from where, and what that associates to what side they fall on politically. I won't go down that road, but you can look that up too. Draw your own conclusion. But what it's opened up to my eyes and asking why? Because I had a conversation with a Republican senator, and I sat with him in his office, and I said, let's remove everything off the table. Politics, religion, region of the world. Let's take it off the table. Can we just agree, as two Americans, looking eye to eye, that killing children at scale is wrong? It's complicated. It's not. So I wanted to ask myself, why? Why is that? Why is it complicated? Through months of research and looking into it, I still have not come to the conclusion that it's complicated. It's very simple. And I've asked myself why? Going all the way back to why Palestine? Why is there this conflict? Why Gaza? Why the West Bank? Why the 1948 line of demarcation? And every bit of which that I've looked at where the United States is not upholding its responsibility in the matter, UN General Assembly Resolution of 1948 specifically states and enshrines the right of the Palestinian refugees who were removed and expelled during the Nakba to return to their land. That's not complicated. It's pretty simple. 1967, UN General Resolution 242. The withdrawal of Israeli forces from where they occupied from the Golan Heights, the West Bank, and Gaza. Doesn't seem complicated. It's pretty simple. If the UN General Assembly and the articles that I speak of were things that were forced upon the United States and the United States had no part in the UN, you'd say, well, that adds factors, but it's still not complicated. But the United States is signatory to those General Assembly resolutions. And in fact, those resolutions would have not passed without the United States because in the UN, the 5 permanent members can veto any of those, and they didn't. When Russia, China, the United States, England, and France can all agree on something, it's not complicated. So that's what I've been learning through this journey of right to exist or right to not. Where? Who? And then someone would say, what about October 7th? Yeah, we should talk about October 7th. We should talk about October 7th of 1936, when the Irgun and the Lehi and the Stern Gang and the Haganah killed hundreds of Palestinians, and Jews and Christians. Why? Because they were fighting for their right to exist. Sounds awfully familiar. We should talk about October 7th, and we should talk about 1948, and we should talk about 1806. To talk about one without the other is a disingenuous argument. To say that one justifies the other is evil. To say that we, the United States, will continue to support one side but disavow the other, when it is us that created the resistance of the other side to now then say that we disavow it, is wrong. We, the United States, and I don't say this as someone that's a fascist or an anti-fascist or some peace activist. We created Hamas. That's a fact. UN General Assembly Resolution 3324, 1978 reaffirmed the legitimacy of resistance to the occupation of Israel occupying forces to include through armed struggle. UN General Assembly Resolution, the United States signed it. So, those are the questions that I've asked myself. I don't have all the answers, but it certainly tells me that there's a lot of things that we are saying that are complicated that aren't. What it tells me is that there's a lot of broken promises, and there's a lot of violated resolutions that if in the United States we're not willing to stand up and take responsibility for that and correct it, we're part of the problem. So that's been my take on it. And I'm not a scholar in these areas. I'm not a UN scholar. But like I said before, I do know how to read.
I think there was two questions, and then I think we probably should close up.
I don't read the mic, I'm pretty loud.
Okay, loud woman.
My question is simple, and it harkens back to the question of orphans and how forgive me, but it has been stated that at least 90% of all domiciles have been destroyed and leveled. And I've heard the number 24 orphans at least. Does that mean that we have 20,000 children sleeping under the stars and vulnerable to not only disease, but also being attacked once again? And if that is the case, are we also saying that it wasn't that long ago that we saw Ukraine being attacked and families fleeing, and Poland and the United States, we opened our doors to helping people flee
So Israel does not allow anyone to leave Gaza, and there is also the United States has canceled 3 tech visas for children who are injured. I don't know if you know that. The State Department has canceled all visas to wounded children from Gaza. And the surrounding countries are not very helpful. They are beholden to special interests from the United States and Israel. Basically, the population in Gaza is besieged not just by one mechanism, by 100 million mechanisms. So yes, the people are intense. There is no privacy. There is no law or order. And the Palestinian society, I'm Palestinian, so I'm very familiar with our society, is very family-oriented, and neighbors take care of each other, so there is a lot of that protects the children. But even with that, crime rate, theft, attacks, family feuds, marital problems, abuse has been rampant, as you can expect from a population that has been abused, bombarded, and starved for over 2 years.
Thank you so much. My question is for Mr. Claude. First of all, I've been incredibly educated tonight by all 3 of you. Thank you so much. I'm a part-time professor at Northeastern University and a nurse here in Boston. And one thing that has given me nightmares my entire life about the genocide, any genocide, is how did they know as a child which ethnic group you were? Like, for me, I just wonder, like, could you lie your way out of it? Did people lie about what ethnic groups they were to survive? And I've been troubled by this my entire life, just wondering how to get out of these situations. Like, I feel like I'm in them at times, and how did you cope with that?
So one of the key things that was actually used to identify people, in Rwanda, everybody's black. Like I said, except for the little part that's Europe, everybody's black. We speak the same language, same traditions. It's hard to tell people apart. It'd be like trying to figure out who is from, in this room, who's from Boston and who's from Dallas, Texas. But during colonialism, so Rwanda has a history of Rwanda was a monarchy, a Tutsi monarchy, and so there was a group, a family, and their friends and cronies that ruled Rwanda for a long time. And when the colonialists came, first Germany and then Belgium, they found an organized society where this one clan within the Tutsi group basically dominated the kingdom of Rwanda and subjugated everybody else, who were Tutsis and Hutus and Twas. And then the Belgians, almost 100 years ago, in 1933, issued ID cards. And in the ID cards, there is actually ethnicity in there. There used to be, there isn't anymore. So, I live in Nashville, and IDs have your eye color, your hair color, your height, and things like that. So one of those identifying things on IDs was whether you were Hutu or Tutsi. As a child, I didn't have one. There was a lot of it was arbitrary, which people would know a person based on their ancestry, and because people don't move too far away from where they're from, But other than that, there were a lot of people who were killed in that genocide who were actually not Tutsi people also. So it was a whole mix, it was very arbitrary. And so that is how, but the biggest thing that was used was the ID cards. And so if you didn't have one, they would kill you regardless because they just suspected that you threw it away. But yes, you could lie. And this is one of the extreme rare situations where, in my opinion, it is okay to lie to prevent a person from being killed or from great harm. And I'll tell a quick story and stop there. There were these, one is actually my relative. I'm telling a story about one of my relatives. She was fleeing Kigali under the rain of bombs and bullets by the RPF, who was taken over, and she got stopped at a checkpoint. She had her baby on her back, and they said, "We're gonna kill you." They took her all the way to this mass grave, and when she got to the spot where they were about to kill her, she recognized the person. She worked at a bank, and she says, "Oh, I know you. I see you at the bank, and I actually know your ID number." The guy asked, what is my ID number? Let's check and see if it's true. She told him his ID number, and he read it, and it was correct. And he goes, "Okay, I'm not gonna kill you, but I'm gonna kill those other two women that are with you, because one of them is really shaking, scared. I know she's Tutsi." And the response was, "No, she's not Tutsi. She's shaking because she's sick, she has malaria." And the person actually ended up not killing them and took him to this little spot and kept them covered up with banana leaves and things like that. So I think the question you're asking is, can you lie to save a life? Should you lie to save a life? I think you should. And I don't know, the father's looking at me over here, but stating my opinion here and what I've seen.
I think we've gone rather over time, so I'm going to hand it over to Father John to close out. But before I do, I just wanted to draw your attention to make sure you go by the table. There's a few action sheets that we'll point out to you, and please pick up a t-shirt if you like. And no amount is too small to donate to the projects that we've talked about tonight. And thank you so much for coming. And here's Father John. And thank you to you, Commissioner.
Well done.
Claude, I was just smiling.
Put you on the spot.
It's a good spot to be put on, right? We do what we need to do. So, excuse me. I get up every Sunday, say my stuff, try to say my stuff like all of us, we try to be who we are, and what we're called to do, and who we're called to be. In these past 2 hours, I'm exhausted. I don't know if anybody else is. And deeply moved. You guys are courageous, you're authentic, you're ridiculously articulate and intelligent, eloquent. It's missing in the world today, and you're speaking to it in a very effective way. And I know that all those that are joining with us on the live stream, all those who have come here tonight, we are more than grateful. Martha, for your persistence, your generosity, you being who you are, helping me. Dr. Kuemmerle, this is the second time, and you continue to make us think, broaden our horizons. I'm more grateful than I could ever say and be. Claude. You know, you can watch movies, The Hotel Rwanda, you can see the PBS Frontline special from 30 years ago. I don't know if anybody ever saw that. It was called The Triumph of Evil. I used to use it with my confirmation classes, you know. That was a heavy thing to use, but it was so powerful, you know. And now here you are to speak your story, your experience. Can't thank you enough for being here tonight and for your witness. And glad you're alive. So thank you. Colonel Aguilar, your mother watching right now has to be one proud mother, right, of her son. I'm struck by how we can all be put into situations and just get put there, or pick up the phone and end up where we end up, and then it's how we be in those situations. And what you've all demonstrated and spoken to us tonight is it's challenging, it's convicting, it's encouraging. I'm glad that Pope Leo, through his chief of staff, somehow got to you and contacted you to say how proud he was of you. Quite a different version than Pope Urban from a long time ago, thank God, huh? Jeez, did you make that connection? Jeez. And we too are so proud. So I just want to end the evening in gratitude to all of you being here, and for all of you. And maybe we can close out with this prayer from Father Michael Judge, who is chaplain, as you know, of FDNY. And as Tony said, was killed when the planes hit the towers. And being in that role here in Boston just made me think, and it's just been a moving evening. So let us pray to this God who we worship in many different ways, from many different traditions and backgrounds, but the God who is a source of love and who calls us to recognize the humanity in every human person. Lord, take us where you want us to go. Let us meet who you want us to meet. Tell us what you want us to say. And keep us out of your way. Amen. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, guys.